An $80 million rescue drone fails, engineers panic, and a billionaire's empire teeters on the edge. Only a 25-year-old local mechanic dares to touch it. What happens next will shock the world. Watch till the end, subscribe for more amazing true tech stories, and tell us, where are you watching from? Let's get started in the depth of the Nevada desert. Beyond the barbed fences and retina scanners, a private hangar buzzed with shifting panic. Vivian Hale, 40, brilliant, unshakably composed, stood in the center of controlled chaos. Before her lay the Aurora X7, an $80 million marvel of rescue technology, utterly motionless, as if refusing to breathe. The hangar lights flickered over the drone's polished carbon shell, reflecting the tension in the room. Engineers huddled around multiple screens, their voices overlapping, their plans dissolving. Every new attempt ended in the same flashing sequence: critical failure. A machine built to save lives was now a machine refusing to live. Vivian's jaw clenched as she watched a fresh wave of error messages crawl across a digital wall, the scarlet glow staining the air with dread. She had spent 3 years building this future. Now, because of a mysterious malfunction, the future seemed eager to crumble under her feet. The stakes were unforgiving. The Pentagon's live demo was scheduled in just a few hours. Lose the demo, lose the contract. Lose the contract, lose every investor who still believed in her. Aurora X7 wasn't just a drone, it was survival for her entire company, and today it was failing spectacularly. She inhaled sharply, pushing back her own rising fear. Vivian Hale was not a woman who panicked. She was a woman who built empires out of doubt. But today, the doubt was winning. Her chief engineer shook his head. "We've exhausted every diagnostic. The system is collapsing. We don't have time." Their defeat felt heavy, almost suffocating in the sterile air. Years of research, millions in investment, reputations built and balanced on razor-thin trust, everything sat on that platform. Vivian walked closer, fingers grazing the drone's cold surface, hoping maybe she could feel something the engineers didn't. But all she felt was silence. A rumble echoed through the hangar as a delivery truck rolled up to the side loading bay, a sound painfully ordinary against the backdrop of looming disaster. A guard barked for the driver's ID while the engineers barely glanced over. No one cared about packages when the company itself was dying. The hangar door slid open and a young man stepped inside holding a medium-sized crate. Ethan Walker, 25. Dust smudge from engine grease. Boots worn from too many long days. He wasn't a contractor. He wasn't cleared technology personnel. Just a local mechanic tasked with delivering a misrouted shipment. He paused when he saw the chaos. To him, it didn't look like a battlefield of innovation. It looked like a room full of people trying too hard to hear a whisper the machine wasn't speaking. He set the crate down slowly, eyes catching on the massive drone towering under harsh white lights. Ethan had grown up fixing things most people threw away. Old radios, rusted engines, fans that wheezed like dying animals. He made them live again with instinct, not certifications. Machines had voices. They talked, and he knew how to listen. Now, the Aurora X7 seemed to be whispering too. Vivian turned slightly, noticing the stranger. In normal circumstances, he would have been escorted out immediately. Today, the crisis was so consuming, no one demanded credentials. He simply existed in the background noise until he walked closer. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to feel the machine's quiet resistance. Ethan didn't speak. He just listened. There was a faint, uneven vibration pulsing through the metal floor beneath the drone. Not loud, not obvious, but present, like a heartbeat skipping rhythm. His eyes narrowed with curiosity. Whatever haunted this machine wasn't catastrophic failure. It was suffocation, a system choking on itself. Vivian's head tilted. There was something unsettling about the way this stranger focused. Engineers fumbled with graphs and formulas. Ethan read the machine like it was telling him a story. It was either disrespect or something more dangerous, a kind of natural understanding that didn't need permission. One engineer noticed him. "Sir, please step away. This is restricted." But Ethan barely heard him. He took a few slow breaths, leaning down to let the faint hum settle into one clear vibration. Machines didn't hide their problems. People just didn't listen long enough to hear them. "It's not dead," he murmured. Vivian's gaze sharpened. She walked toward him, heels clicking against the polished floor. "Excuse me, who exactly are you?" Her voice carried the weight of authority, edged with exhaustion. She wasn't in the mood for intrusions, and yet she sensed his presence wasn't accidental. Ethan straightened. "I'm Ethan Walker. I was delivering a crate, but your drone isn't failing. It's fighting itself." His explanation sounded absurdly simple in a room full of PhDs. A few engineers scoffed. One rolled his eyes. Another muttered, "Wonderful. A delivery boy thinks he's a specialist." Vivian folded her arms, unimpressed yet intrigued. "You're telling me my $80 million prototype is—" "Confused?" Ethan shrugged with modest confidence. "Not confused. Suffocating. Something's making the system choke every cycle. That vibration under the chassis. It's trying to run, but something's blocking it." The engineers exchanged irritated glances, one stepping forward with frustration. "We've checked every block, every loop, every circuit. There is no obstruction. Please step back before you interfere with classified equipment." But still, the young mechanic didn't flinch. He simply pointed to the base. "Then why is there a frequency drop every 3 seconds?" Silence rippled through the team. Vivian's heartbeat quickened, not because she believed him yet, but because she recognized certainty when she heard it. Ethan wasn't guessing. He was stating a fact he couldn't prove, but felt. And sometimes instinct was more honest than data. She gave a small nod. "Show me." Gasps and objections flew. "Ma'am, he's untrained. He has no clearance. This is a liability." But Vivian raised her hand, silencing the room. She didn't trust Ethan yet, but she trusted desperation. Every expert here had failed. The one person unafraid of the machine might hold something the rest didn't. Ethan approached the drone, kneeling carefully near the lower shell. He didn't touch anything. He just let his ear hover near the surface, tracing the rhythmic stutter in the metal with his fingertips. His brow furrowed, then his eyes widened slightly, like he found a clue no one else noticed. "There," he whispered. Vivian stepped closer. "What is it?" "A cooling loop that shouldn't be vibrating like this. It's clogged or misaligned. Probably both." His voice stayed calm, measured, certain. "Your drone isn't shutting down because it's broken. It's shutting down to protect itself." The chief engineer snorted. "Impossible." Ethan's eyes met his, steady. "Machines tell the truth. You just have to shut up long enough to hear it." Vivian bit back a surprised smirk. Nothing had amused her today, until this moment. She knelt beside him, matching his gaze with equal seriousness. "If you're wrong, I'll have to remove you from the premises." "If I'm wrong," Ethan replied softly, "your drone was never going to fly anyway." Something in his confidence sparked a fire inside her, a flicker of hope she hadn't felt all morning. She stood and motioned to her team, "Open the lower panel, now." Engineers hesitated but obeyed. The panel popped open, revealing the maze-like wiring and valves of the cooling loop. A hush fell. The valve was vibrating violently, overcompensating for a clogged microvent that every diagnostic had. Overlooked. It wasn't a critical failure. It was a hidden restriction, small, simple, deadly. Vivian's breath caught. Ethan had heard what their machines hadn't shown. He stepped back, respectful. "That's your problem. She can run. She just can't breathe." Vivian stared at him, her pulse thundering with shock. A stranger, a mechanic, had found the flaw 20 elite engineers failed to detect. It wasn't possible. It wasn't logical. Yet there it was, undeniable. For the first time all morning she exhaled with something resembling relief. "Ethan," she said quietly, "don't leave." He blinked. "I wasn't planning to." And as the hangar absorbed this strange new silence, the calm before transformation, Vivian realized something unexpected. She didn't just see a mechanic standing before her, she saw the one person in the entire desert who might save her future. Ethan didn't move for a few seconds after the drone lifted. He kept his hand under the stabilizer, watching the vibration signature with the caution of someone who respected machines more than people. The engineers exchanged stunned glances. Vivian stood frozen, breath caught somewhere between fear, relief, and disbelief. The hum of the Aurora X-7 filled the hangar like a distant choir, steady, confident, alive. Vivian had heard every version of this drone's voice for 11 months, coughing, stuttering, choking, dying. But this hum was different. It was clean, balanced, purposeful. She stepped closer, mesmerized, unsure whether to interrupt the miracle. Ethan finally glanced over his shoulder, his expression calm, almost shy. "She's breathing now," he said quietly. "Machines breathe differently than humans, but they still breathe." The words weren't poetic to him, but they struck Vivian like a revelation. Her engineers stared as if witnessing a language none of them could interpret. He lowered the drone gently, disabling flight mode with the smooth confidence of someone who trusted his instincts more than any manual. The landing skids touched the platform with surgical precision. Vivian exhaled, the air leaving her lungs in a sharp, trembling rush, as if she'd been holding her breath for months. One of the senior engineers stepped forward, clearly defensive. "Wait, what exactly did you do? That valve was tested yesterday." Ethan wiped his hands on his jeans, unbothered. "You tested it cold," he said softly. "It only fails under pressure. Heat exposure warps the alignment by 2 degrees. His tone wasn't arrogant, just factual. Vivian felt a strange stirring in her chest, something she hadn't felt in years, admiration. Ethan's voice carried no ego, no hunger for attention. He explained only because he knew the machine, not because he needed validation. She watched her team struggle to comprehend how they'd missed something so simple. The engineer frowned. "But the gyroscope readings?" Ethan shook his head. "The readings were reacting to a false imbalance caused by the sensor clog. You're diagnosing symptoms, not the problem." His steady confidence wasn't aggressive, it was grounded. Vivian realized he wasn't correcting them. He was teaching them without meaning to. Another engineer stepped forward. "Who are you?" Ethan blinked, then laughed awkwardly. "I'm nobody, just a mechanic." Vivian studied him. Nobody? No. This was someone whose instincts were sharper than most resumes. She wondered how many people had dismissed him, how many opportunities had passed him simply because he wasn't packaged like a prodigy. The drone powered down, and the silence that followed felt heavy, charged. Vivian stepped toward him, heels clicking against polished concrete. She stopped close enough to notice the faint scent of motor oil on his shirt. "You fixed what 20 engineers couldn't," she said gently. "How did you learn to do that?" Ethan shrugged. "My dad taught me to listen before touching anything. Machines speak, most people just don't hear them." He said it casually, unaware of how profound it sounded. Vivian felt the corners of her lips lift. "Your father must be proud." Ethan's eyes dimmed slightly. He passed last year. But yeah, he'd like this. A quiet ache cut through the moment. Vivian understood loss too well. But she also understood brilliance when she saw it. She turned to her team. Everyone out. They hesitated. Now, the hangar slowly emptied until only she and Ethan remained. She looked at the drone, then back at him, making a decision. "I need to know how you saw what none of us did." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, uncomfortable. Pay attention. Machines don't lie. People do. Computers hide things. Sounds don't." Vivian nodded slowly, absorbing every word. Her billion-dollar world prioritized algorithms. His world prioritized intuition. "You rewired a defense-grade valve by hand," she said. "Most people are terrified to even touch that circuit." Ethan laughed nervously. "Yeah, I figured that out when your team looked at me like I was cutting a bomb wire." Vivian couldn't help smiling. "That's because you practically did. But it worked." He opened the side panel again, showing her the misalignment. Vivian leaned in, watching his hands move, sure, steady, precise. This weld, he said, expands unevenly when it hits temperature spikes. It chokes the coolant path, kills the cycle stability. See this pattern? Vivian leaned closer. I see it now. I never did before. She realized something humbling. She had created the most advanced rescue drone in the country, yet this young mechanic had understood its weaknesses in minutes. Not because he had more data, because he had more intuition. In a world drowning in numbers, someone who listened was invaluable. Why didn't you become an engineer? She asked quietly. He shrugged. Couldn't afford school. And I'm not the type who fits in fancy rooms. Vivian raised an eyebrow. You just walked into one and saved an $80 million project. Ethan laughed. Only because I didn't know it cost that much. Vivian found herself genuinely laughing, something she hadn't done in days. She leaned against the workstation, watching him check the stabilizer bearings. You know, she said softly, the Pentagon is arriving for a demo in 6 hours. Without this drone, my company collapses. Ethan nodded. Then we'd better make sure she stays in the air. His confidence wasn't loud, it was dependable. Vivian felt her pulse steady for the first time in days. She moved beside him, watching closely as he calibrated the sensor alignment. He explained every step in simple, elegant terms. For the first time, she understood her own machine in a new language. The drone's internal diagnostics came to life on the monitor. Readings that had stayed stubbornly unstable for months now formed perfect, synchronized lines. Vivian stared at the screen as though witnessing a medical miracle. This shouldn't be possible, she whispered. Ethan corrected softly. It was always possible. You just needed to see differently. She sank onto a nearby stool, overwhelmed. For years she had carried the weight of her company, investors, and legacy. Now a young mechanic had lifted a piece of that weight without hesitation. She watched him reassemble the panel carefully, treating the drone with the tenderness of someone fixing a wounded animal. You know, she said after a moment, I built this drone for rescue missions, to save people who can't save themselves. Ethan nodded. Then it deserves to fly right. His words settled in her chest like something warm, grounding. This man wasn't motivated by money or fame. He cared about the purpose behind the machine. Vivian suddenly realized something else. She trusted him. A stranger. A 25-year-old mechanic in dusty boots and a worn t-shirt. She trusted him more than she trusted half her executive board. It startled her but didn't feel wrong. Sometimes clarity doesn't arrive in perfect packaging. As Ethan tightened the final screw, the drone gave a soft chime, acknowledging full functionality. Vivian watched the lights ripple across its frame. Her heart thudded with disbelief. 11 months, she whispered. We tried simulations, redesigns, specialists, and you fixed it in 20 minutes, Ethan shrugged. Machines like honesty. Vivian stepped closer, lowering her voice. Ethan Walker, you just saved my company. Ethan shook his head. No, she saved herself. I just helped her talk. She stared at him for a long, quiet moment, her expression softening into something unexpectedly vulnerable. You don't know it yet, she said, but this moment is going to change your life. He looked confused, almost suspicious, but Vivian smiled, a real, slow, certain smile, because she already knew exactly what she was about to offer him, and nothing in Ethan Walker's life would ever be the same again. Ethan stood frozen for a moment, unsure how to react to the applause erupting around him. Engineers who had ignored him minutes earlier now watched him with a mixture of respect, curiosity, and disbelief. The Aurora X7 still hummed softly on its landing skids, its lights glowing like a heartbeat finally restored. Vivian stepped forward slowly, each heel click echoing through the hangar. The air shifted around her, no longer tense, no longer burdened by pressure and fear. She looked at Ethan as though seeing him clearly for the first time, not as a stranger or an accident, but as an answer she never expected. You just saved my company, she repeated, her voice quieter this time, almost reverent. Ethan shifted awkwardly, unused to praise. I just fixed a problem, he said. Vivian studied him with a steady intensity. No, she replied softly. You fixed possibility. He blinked, unsure what she meant, but something in her tone warmed him. She stopped only a few feet from him, close enough that he could see the faint exhaustion beneath her eyes, an exhaustion carried for months, now suddenly lifted. Tell me what you want, she said. A salary? A full-time position? A contractor role? Equity? A lab? Name it. Ethan laughed nervously. I'm just a mechanic, he said. I don't belong in a place like this. Vivian shook her head firmly. You belong exactly where brilliance lives, and brilliance lives here. Ethan's discomfort deepened, though not in a bad way, more like someone hearing a new language but instinctively recognizing its meaning. Around them, the engineers resumed quiet work, but their glances kept drifting toward the pair. Some watched with envy, others with admiration, but no one doubted what they had seen. Vivian Hale, one of the most powerful tech CEOs in Nevada, was offering a mechanic the kind of opportunity people spent lifetimes chasing. Ethan wiped his palms on his jeans, suddenly aware of how out of place he looked in this gleaming hangar. Dusty boots, oil-smeared shirt, calloused hands. Vivian noticed his hesitation and stepped a little closer, lowering her voice. You don't have to impress anyone, she said. Your work already did that for you. He swallowed, his eyes drifting back to the drone, his unlikely doorway into a world he never imagined. What would you even want me to do here? Vivian exhaled slowly. Help me rebuild this program from the inside. Help me understand machines the way you do. Help me create technology that actually listens. Her sincerity startled him. Most CEOs he'd heard about were distant, unreachable, armored by success. But Vivian spoke with the rawness of someone who had fought for everything she built and wasn't afraid to admit when fate handed her an unexpected blessing. Ethan looked down, trying to process it all. My whole life, he said quietly. People told me I wasn't aiming high enough. Vivian waited. They said I should have tried college, pushed harder, fought for more. He looked up, meeting her eyes. But maybe I didn't know where I was supposed to be. Vivian's expression softened into something almost gentle. Sometimes, she said, where you belong finds you. A silence settled between them, warm, fragile, full of possibility. Ethan felt something shift inside him, a flicker of confidence, a whisper of belonging. He exhaled slowly. Then what exactly are you offering me? Vivian extended her hand with calm certainty. Help me fix the future, she said. Not fix a drone, not fix a program, not fix a company. Fix the future. Ethan hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing against him. She held her hand steady, patient, trusting. I don't know much about your world, he said honestly. That's why I need you, she replied. He studied her face, earnest, determined, hopeful, and for the first time he felt the path ahead shift from intimidating to possible. He reached out and took her hand. Her grip was warm, strong, decisive. A strange spark passed between them, not romantic, but powerful, two worlds recognizing each other. The engineers resumed clapping, softer this time, more respectful. Ethan felt heat crawl up his neck, embarrassed but strangely proud. Vivian didn't release his hand immediately. Ethan Walker, she said with quiet gravity, welcome to Hale Industries. He laughed under his breath. Guess today wasn't as normal as I thought. Vivian smiled. For what it's worth, she added, you handled it better than most seasoned professionals. Ethan shrugged. Machines don't scare me. Vivian stepped closer to the drone. Good, she said, because the next part will. Ethan blinked. Next part? She gestured at the massive hangar doors. The Pentagon team will be here in 50 minutes, she said. Ethan paled. Wait, they're coming today. Vivian nodded. And I need you to stand beside me when I present the drone. Ethan stared at her as if she'd spoken another language. Me? He said. I don't do presentations. Vivian clasped her hands behind her back, steady and commanding. You're the only person who truly understands what this drone needs to fly perfectly. If something goes wrong, I want you beside me. Ethan blinked, overwhelmed. Vivian, I'm not trained for that. She held his gaze with unwavering confidence. "You're trained for exactly that," she said. "You listen, you see patterns others miss. You fix problems before they explode." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "I just don't want to embarrass you." Vivian's voice softened. "Ethan, the only embarrassing thing would be me facing them without you." Something in her tone, trust, vulnerability, respect, settled the storm inside him. He exhaled deeply. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll stand with you." Vivian smiled, a smile that held relief, gratitude, and something unspoken. "Good," she murmured. "We start together." The hangar doors groaned open as military trucks approached. Ethan's heart pounded. Vivian stepped beside him, not in front of him, not as a shield, not as a superior, but as a partner. "Whatever happens in there," she whispered, "remember one thing. You earned your place." Their steps echoed in unison as they approached the drone, now gleaming under the overhead lights. Engineers aligned themselves behind Vivian, ready for demonstration. The Pentagon officials entered, stern, unreadable, assessing everything with razor-sharp precision. Vivian greeted them with practiced confidence, but her eyes kept flicking toward Ethan, not nervously but knowingly, as if silently saying, "You belong here." When she began her presentation, her voice carried strength and grace. She explained the drone's design, purpose, breakthroughs. Then she gestured toward Ethan. "And this," she said, "is the man who made today possible." Ethan felt every pair of eyes fall on him. For a moment, he feared he'd falter, but then he remembered the drone's hum, the rhythm he'd trusted. He stepped forward, steady. "Aurora X7 wasn't broken," he said. "She was just asking for someone to listen." The room went silent. Even the Pentagon officials looked taken aback, not by his lack of degrees, but by his clarity. He explained the misalignment, the heat choke, the gyroscope's false loops. His words were simple, clean, professional. When he finished, Vivian looked at him with unmistakable pride. The demo began. The drone lifted into the air smoothly, flawlessly. It maneuvered through its programmed search patterns with perfect agility. The Pentagon team nodded, impressed. When it completed its final landing sequence, a reserved applause followed. Vivian exhaled quietly, the weight of months dissolving. One official stepped forward. "Miss Hale," he said, "you've exceeded expectations." Vivian nodded politely, but her eyes drifted to Ethan. "We exceeded expectations," she corrected. Ethan felt something bloom in his chest, a quiet, powerful warmth. When the officials left, the hangar doors closed and silence returned. Vivian turned to him. "You changed everything today," she said softly. Ethan shook his head. "No, we did." She smiled at that, genuinely, warmly. The kind of smile that rewrites the future. She extended her hand again, not for a contract, but for something deeper. "Welcome to the beginning," she said. Ethan stared at her hand, then clasped it firmly. And under the soft hum of the drone they saved together, a billionaire and a mechanic forged a partnership built not on status, not on titles, but on trust, purpose, and a shared belief that sometimes the right person isn't the one you expect, but the one you almost overlooked. Their story didn't end that night. It began.